Halloween is over, but mediocre movies are forever. Hey everyone, it's Neil, and I am here today to talk about the movie that everyone is talking about. It's the new big thing on the internet, and I guess just all around the world right now. Okay, new might be stretching it just a bit. But of course I'm talking about a little movie that you might have heard of called Five Nights at Freddy's. I can't believe I decided to do a video on this because I am not, by any means a big fan of this. But as a total noob that doesn't know a lot about Five Nights at Freddy's, I thought that it would be fun to do a video just giving my thoughts on the movie. So at this point I think it's safe to say that pretty much everyone in the world is somewhat familiar with this game series, or in some cases book series. It's games, it's books, it's a movie now. It's something that's extremely popular with both Gen Z and Gen Alpha. But it's also something that was at its peak most popular back in, I want to say 2013, 2014. I think 2014 is when the game came out. And the film adaptation is something that has been a long time coming. There have been so many attempts to get this thing off the ground that the fact that we actually have it now is just unbelievable. I remember at one point Chris Columbus was attached to this movie, which, yeah, not a great choice. And I remember seeing pictures of behind the scenes of the animatronics that they were going to use for the Warner Brothers version of the film. They had some really creepy looking, some fantastic animatronics. The fact that all of that just ended up on the cutting room floor is really sad. I don't know if that movie would have been any better than what we ended up with, but there is a part of me that really wants to see what that would have been. On top of that, we've also got a lot of knockoff movies that have come out in the past few years. There's Wally's Wonderland with Nick Cage. Warner Brothers, they ended up doing a direct-to-video Banana Splits movie. Because sure, why not? So yeah, it's been about a decade since the game originally came out, but here it is. So as far as my expectations for this thing, I think I was just kind of excited to finally be in the know, because people online are always talking about this game and the confusing lore of it all, and I never have any idea what they're talking about. So the fact that I was getting a movie, I was like, wow, I can finally understand what's going on. I can finally be one of the cool kids. Now, I guess I should point out that I have actually played the first game. I played that right when it came out. Everything after that is just a complete mystery to me. I remember hearing a lot about how the Jim Henson Company was working on puppets and animatronics for this, and that got me excited because I'm a big fan of whatever stuff Jim Henson puts out. But I did notice while seeing trailers and promos for this movie that the animatronics looked a lot more cutesy than I thought they would. And now that I have seen the movie, I completely understand why. So if I had one word to describe Five Nights at Freddy's, it would be boring. Until the last 15 minutes, which kind of ruled. But it's funny because the absolute last thing I expected to say about this movie was that I was bored. I thought, killer animatronics, how can you go wrong with that? So to basically summarize the story, there's a security guard named Mike who accidentally beats up the wrong guy. This ends up with him getting a job where he's tasked with watching an abandoned pizzeria at night. And of course, there's an unraveling mystery where it turns out that there's children that were murdered a long time ago and their souls are haunting the robots. I don't know if that's a spoiler or not. I think everyone just knows that at this point, right? Well, with that said, there will be spoilers in this video. But what I didn't expect from this movie is that it's not just about killer robots. It's about trauma.
What does trauma really look like? This is what trauma looks like.
And I know that's a thing lately with horror movies. Everyone's always complaining that too many horror movies nowadays are all about traumatic experiences and dealing with that trauma. And yeah, I do agree that that is overdone at this point, and I'd like to find ways for them to kind of switch that up a bit. But at the same time, I think the setup for this movie is perfectly fine. The idea of the main character having ties to the killer that murdered his brother, all of that works for me. I think you could have made a really good horror movie using that idea, but it's just the execution that's very poor. I mean, Josh Hutcherson, he's like a competent actor. He's not that interesting, but I think that's more on the character than on him. I think the actor that's the most fun to watch in this movie is Matthew Lillard, and I don't even think it's because he's that good in it. I think it's just because it looks like he's having fun with it. He also doesn't get enough screen time. Like, I guess he kind of shows up again towards the end, but he is the main antagonist for this whole franchise now, so he'll be back. He always comes back. So as I've kind of hinted at already, this movie is very much geared towards kids. It's a PG-13 film that to me a lot of the time felt like it could have been PG. At least if this had come out in like the 90s, it would have been PG. There's not a lot of jump scares in this, which I thought to be incredibly bizarre considering like the entire premise of the games is jump scares. There's like 1 or 2 jump scares involving the cupcake. There's a cupcake in this. I don't know what that was about. But I was waiting for like the signature Freddy Fazbear, and it was not here. The monsters are more cutesy, but they also have very like slow movements. Like I've seen from some promotional videos that the robots are able to kind of move around a bit more. But I do wish that they got to emote a bit more, because like I've seen what they can do, and in the movie itself, it's very limited, which yeah, I get their animatronics, but I think the fact that we're getting a movie makes me think they should kind of push it a bit more, do a bit more with it. Now, despite the fact that I say this is mainly for kids, there is like one really good kill in it where a girl gets bit in half and you just kind of see like the silhouette with the blood shatter on the wall. I liked that a lot. And I did like how there is a lot of dark subject matter in the movie. It's just all very much implied, like they won't show anything. Part of me is like, hey, I wish they'd showed it. Another part of me is like, well, if they had showed it, then this wouldn't be a thing for kids anymore, so I get it. And there's a lot of stuff in this that just didn't make any sense to me, and either I wasn't paying enough attention to the film, or I should have read the books or something before I watched this. I'm sure a lot of fans knew what was going on better than I did. But like the whole idea of he has to watch this abandoned pizzeria because it has sentimental value to the owner, but why are you watching an abandoned pizzeria? And I thought it would be like, oh, he has to keep the animatronics from getting out at night. But then the scene where the animatronics kill all the people takes place during the day, so what was that about? And then when those guys do break in during the day, they're like, oh, you f***ed up, Mike, and it's like, did you see those gates? Anyone could break through those. Was that the best security they had? There's also this cop lady named Vanessa who is really bad at her job. I mean, she just kind of abandons her shift and just goes and hangs out at this abandoned pizzeria at night, dumps a bunch of Five Nights at Freddy's lore on Mike. She's really just there for exposition and for the plot twist where she turns out to be William Afton's daughter. William Afton being Matthew Lillard. I thought it was really funny when she's like, I tried to warn you, Mike, in my own way. Like, what? You didn't do shit. Supposedly this movie like proves a lot of fan theories, but as a normal person, why should I care? This is the most Gen Z movie I have ever seen. I hope this isn't the future of films, but we'll see. There are more cameos from internet celebrities in this than the angry video game nerd movie. I mean, this movie has the audacity to end on a Living Tombstone song, and that is not a joke. That is what happens. And despite the song being like nearly a decade old now, it's very much stuck in my head again. As I said, the ending is really the only part of this film that I really enjoyed, and I think just because it goes bonkers towards the end. Like, you got Matthew Lillard wearing a rabbit suit and he's got this huge knife. That to me is cinema. That is exactly the kind of energy that I want for a sequel to this. Just make the whole movie feel like that. So right now, this thing is making like a ton of money in theaters. Like, I'm talking almost It Chapter 1 and 2 money. Why is it there are like so many good horror movies out there, and the only ones that make a ton of money are like the really bad ones? It's also really insane because this is also on Peacock. I mean, that's where I watched it. So the fact that it's on streaming and in theaters and it's still making that kind of money is just mind-blowing. think I've made it quite clear that I didn't like the movie, but despite this, I found it to be very interesting. In a way, I guess it's kind of like a modern day Goosebumps, like a horror franchise that kids can sort of get behind. Or dare I say, Bionicle in terms of complex lore. And in the sense that you have to do homework to understand what's going on. I can also see some similarities between something like this and the Chucky franchise. Speaking of which, William Afton stole Chucky's line. That's Chucky that says he'll come back.
I'll be back. I always come back.
Do I think that you could make a good sequel to this movie? Yeah, I very much think you could, unless if they decide to go a similar route and make it incredibly boring again. But it's kind of interesting that there was all this hype behind this, and now it's out, and it's just kind of whatever. But I'm still open to watching more, I guess, so there you have it. So those are my opinions on the movie. Maybe you'll be mad that I didn't like it, but I didn't despise it either. I was pretty whatever about it. But thank you to everyone who watched. I hope you had a happy Halloween, and I hope you have a happy holiday season coming up too, because that's the next thing we gotta worry about, isn't it? Alright, I'll see you all again another time. Take care.